It's extremely exciting to know that from midnight on the 27th of February we will begin to welcome home again those Kiwis or eligible travellers who are in Australia, and that's the beginning of our reconnection plan, which then follows 2 weeks later with those in other parts of the world able to travel home without managed isolation. I think what those travellers will find is an airport welcome that they're really familiar with, but with some added extras. The team here have done an incredible job of integrating extra steps into the process seamlessly, but that will help us ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep them safe and our community safe as well. The final additional step in the process, which, as I say, will feel fairly seamless given how integrated it is the welcome home pack that travellers will receive right at the conclusion of their arrival. So after they've collected their bags, travellers will at that final stop be issued with their pack of rapid antigen tests and instructions on how to use them and when to use them. The pack also includes information and advice just on self-isolation and when they should administer their tests. Obviously they only require 2 rapid antigen tests, but an extra one is being issued should a traveller need it, and of course that could be used for anything. For instance, if they have someone they're self-isolating with who may experience symptoms, for instance. So this is the first step in welcoming those travellers home. We do expect that the system and our expectations of travellers will change. When we announced reconnection, we started with 10 days of isolation. It's already reduced to 7. We've asked our experts to give us advice on whether that is it'll be possible to change that again, and we expect it will continue to evolve and reduce. And that is all a part of us making sure that we're moving as quickly and as safely as we can to reconnect with the world. Happy to take questions.
So to clarify, from Sunday, 7 days isolation, how long realistically do you think that isolation period will last?
Yeah, already, as I've said, we started with these announcements only a few weeks ago, indicating there'd likely be a shortening of that requirement. Already it's moved from 10 days now to just 7. We expect it over time to change again, and we are asking our experts for advice on when they believe that may be likely and what periods it might be likely for.
So when do you think you'll get that advice? Because people booking want that certainty, right? You're not going to book a holiday to New Zealand.
Of course, we receive rolling advice all of the time, but we have asked our experts to give upfront consideration of this question. We do know that self-isolation has a knock-on for all sorts of industries and for people's planning, so we know that we need to give as much advance warning of those changes as we can. Keep in mind though, the context we have right now is a growing pandemic, so we do need to consider the safety of New Zealanders at the same time.
Do you accept that people simply won't book a holiday to New Zealand though, that airlines won't commit to flights here, that tourism operators may keep things mothballed while that isolation period is in place?
If you look at the way we've worked our reconnecting plan, we've prioritised making sure that New Zealanders and those who otherwise are eligible to travel into New Zealand through our current system are the first coming back, and that's because for them it's more likely to be a longer term stay or a permanent stay, and then self-isolation doesn't present perhaps the same amount of barrier that it would for others. As we progressively move through, we accept that it will have an impact, but we also believe we'll be in a position to start changing some of those periods as we move through.
What do you say to businesses then who are worried that given the red settings, given the lack of tourists, all these problems, that economic hit is going to be even harder? I know you're going to say this package was announced yesterday. It's quite a broad package. It's not necessarily going to cover everything.
Oh, actually, what I was going to say is what you described are actually public health protections rather than problems. Look, what I'd say for our tourism industry in particular, we want to make sure that when we are welcoming people into New Zealand, and we're looking forward to doing that soon, that we have a place that people feel safe in, that actually they're able to move freely around the country, and we have the lowest level of public health restrictions possible to achieve those things. It's constantly about getting that balance right. If we are overrun with too many cases and we're seeding too many more into the system from our border than we can cope with, our tourists just won't have the same experience. So we do need to get that balance right.
We are seeing very few cases in MIQ though now compared to how many cases there are in the community. Why is that there at all?
A couple of things at play here. We, of course, don't have, in our managed isolation system at the moment, the number of people who are likely to come through. So, obviously, managed isolation reduces down the number of travellers. We expect thousands to come through our gates, and they will be welcome. But we do want to make sure that as they're coming in, that we are ready for the new cases that will be seeded in our community as a result. So while we are managing growth in our pandemic, we're going to ease the border carefully. But once we come through that, we'll have more of an opportunity to open up more widely.
Yeah. Protest this morning, 3 police officers in hospital. How does this end without violence?
We're already seeing violence at the protest as we have seen this morning, and the behaviour, the attacks on the police have been absolutely disgraceful. My message would be to anyone who is down there who believes that they are part of a peaceful protest, that is not what we've seen today. I would encourage them to leave. Clearly, there are a group who are increasingly acting out in a violent way towards the police officers who are only doing their job.
Police have admitted that they've had the power to, bring in those concrete blocks all along. So
sorry, the police have admitted that they have a...
they could have brought in those concrete
right.
blocks from the beginning. Should that have happened a long time ago?
For now, our focus, and everyone's focus, rightly so, is in ensuring that the issue that we have in the centre of Wellington is resolved. Obviously, that falls to the police to make the decisions around how tactically they do want to see a resolution through their operations, how they deploy, what methods they use. In the aftermath, I'm sure that they themselves will want to look at how successful that operation has been, but right now, rightly, everyone is focused on the issue.
So do you think it was possibly too late?
Oh, look, I don't think now is the time to pick apart an operation. Now is the time, obviously, to let the police see through the operation, to do it as safely for their team as they can. Those are all their calls. In the aftermath, I'm sure we, of course, will want to make sure that everything that could have been done was done.
Prime Minister, what briefings have the police given you after this morning's
I have been receiving, for the most part, when I'm in Wellington, regular briefings. I will say that after I heard what happened this morning with an as yet unconfirmed liquid being thrown at police officers that caused hospitalisations, I did contact the Commissioner because I was concerned for his staff's safety and from what I was seeing reported. I think we can all agree it's disgraceful. The police are there doing a job to keep Wellingtonians safe, to let them move around the city without being harassed. To have them met with such acts of violence is just totally wrong.
How worried are you that this is going to escalate further? We saw some revolting behaviour yesterday. It seems to have escalated again today. What's it going to get to?
So much of that is in the hands of the decisions that individuals there are making. To anyone who has said that this is a peaceful protest, they can surely see now that in some quarters it is not. And so it is their responsibility to leave, and of course the police are playing their role to make sure that they do also.
Do you think that there are national enactors now are being political opportunists, as some have called them, around this?
Look, from some of... let me come back a step. All parties in Parliament have said that we will not engage with those who are so blatantly breaking the law in their occupation of Wellington right now. And that was a very clear statement. It is a statement that certainly I stand by and we as the Labour Party stand by. I don't think that we can move away from such clarity, and yet what I saw yesterday from the Leader of the Opposition, I have to say, was dangerously close to sympathy for what is happening in Wellington right now.
And what do you say to him about that?
Well, it's for him to justify his language, but in my view, Parliament was right when it stood firmly and collectively in denouncing what is happening on our forecourt. There is a place for peaceful protest in this country, and many politicians over the years have engaged with peaceful protest, but that is not what is happening on the forecourt.
Do you think National is tapping into some public sentiment that they're seeing, that they're hearing, that they're feeling, that not necessarily the most violent aspects of this, but some of those messages are being put across?
I think there are times and places when politics should be put aside, and this is one of them. What's happening in Wellington is wrong. Now, I don't care which political party you're a member of. I'd like to think that we can all stand together and say, when you threaten people who are working in and around the city, when kids aren't able to move freely, and when it is difficult for people to just do their jobs in and around Wellington, we should all denounce that very, very clearly.
And on that violence, Te Rurumana o Taranaki whānau headquarters have been vandalised by
Yeah.
convoy protesters. Marae Te Tahi Bay has received arson threats. You know, how worried are you about that? And is the government going to work with iwi to keep them safe?
We have been talking with iwi, as have police. You know, we are deeply concerned by some of the reports of threats and violence that they've received. And we continue to work alongside them to make sure they have the support that they need. They've made their views very clear as well. I think the one thing, though, that we would all want to make sure is being emphasised here, what is happening in Wellington is not New Zealand. It's not. And to see that difference in view being expressed also does not make us a divided society. What we have is a group who are simply going too far, who are breaking the law and who need to leave.
You were worried about police safety. Would Cabinet consider declaring a state of emergency or using the military to help them?
So the police, and of course we've had countless conversations with them around what resourcing may be required or what support they may need. And they've made it clear that they believe they have the powers, including enforcement powers, that are required to deal with the situation. So that is not a request that has been made to us.
Prime Minister,
Yeah.
Can we get a quick comment on Russia's actions on the Ukrainian border this morning?
You know, obviously we're seeing an escalation which across Europe and many of those that we work closely with is very clearly being denounced, and New Zealand shares in that strong stance. Of course, everyone wants to see a de-escalation. Everyone wants to have seen diplomacy work. It is deeply concerning to see that ongoing escalation. The Foreign Minister will be releasing a statement, a very strong statement from New Zealand alongside others denouncing what we're seeing.
Will that include any sanctions?
The first port of call for us is to look directly at the message that can be sent through things like travel bans. And that is a way for us to demonstrate the very strong views on what we are seeing happen in the region and share alongside our partners the strength of feeling that we have on the escalation.
Would Labor reconsider the autonomous sanctions bill, Jerry Brownling's bill that was voted down last year?
There's been a lot of ongoing consideration around that issue. You know, one of the issues there is it doesn't necessarily offer the breadth of situations where sanctions, often may be considered. So a few questions for us on whether or not that regime or the bill as it stood was fit for purpose. Some of those discussions around how do we make sure New Zealand is able to respond strongly when we see international actions that stand against our values and norms, and we continue to work on a suite of measures that will help us respond in situations like this.
And very quickly,
I guess the point is autonomous sanctions aren't the only thing you can do.
Okay, very quickly, will the Minister's statement be a Five Eyes joint statement?
We're making a statement as New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, Prime Minister. Our news organisations are reporting that 1 in 8 people turning up to get a war are COVID-positive patients, and we're also struggling to get test results back within 1 week, and soon international arrivals will be arriving. Are you still confident that Auckland's health system can cope?
Yes, and the numbers are demonstrating that they are. What I would say to certain parts of the region, we are of course seeing higher case numbers, and therefore you'd expect to see higher hospitalisations as well. But sitting between the 1 to 1.5% hospitalisation rate, which does show that for most people Omicron is a mild to moderate illness, but the scale is large and it will grow. On the rapid antigen test, they've been deployed for some time in our hospital A&E departments at, for instance, Middlemore. So everyone who is coming in is being tested. They do have a number of patients who are testing positive who may not be at A&E because they believe they have COVID, but for instance may have a broken arm, appendicitis or other. They are making up a portion of those testing positive. Again, they may be hospitalised, but without it actually being because of COVID, rather it's with COVID.
Prime Minister, those testing queues are enormous and hours long. Do we need to rejig that criteria again?
Two really important messages I do want to share. You'll see that rapid antigen tests are now being used at our community testing station. So certain people will be sent away with a rapid antigen test. And also on Thursday, you'll see rapid antigen tests being used by GPs, often in places where they otherwise may have used PCRs. But still, the most important message I can share, our testing stations continue to report that a large portion of people who are coming through are worried, but not necessarily requiring tests. So again, if you're symptomatic, if you are a household contact or a close contact, if you've been told to get a test, please do. But otherwise, if you don't meet any of those criteria, we do ask that you don't go to our testing stations. It is causing long lines.
Even if you are eligible for a RAT test, you still have to wait an hour-long queue in order to get it?
Well, the only issue, of course, being that if you're all in a queue seeking a test, they are working through them in the order in which they've arrived. Of course, staff are trying to triage to identify who would take a rapid antigen test versus a PCR. But one of the major issues still continues to be people who are worried coming to be tested. I understand your anxiety, but please, if you are not symptomatic or you're not a contact who needs to be tested, please do not attend our testing stations. It is standing in the way of people who need to be tested.
Do teachers come as critical workers now?
They do have the flexibility. We have the flexibility in the system now for teachers. If their school determines that it's necessary for them to be back at school despite being a close contact, they'll have the ability to bring them back into the school. And so that means access to rapid antigen tests as well to support that. But we do want schools to think about whether or not that's something they wish to do, and they're best placed to make that decision. All right, I better exit because I better get on a plane.
When do we move to phase 3?
Yeah, look, we are expecting a move to phase 3 fairly shortly. You will remember that we set out the different timeframes we expected before we'd move into that phase. But what does that mean for the general public? It means we'd narrow down our definition of who a contact is, and you'll see more frequently the use of rapid antigen testing. Whilst less effective than what we've used all the way through, it is of course quicker to process. All right, thanks everyone.